Shalawam, and welcome back to The Hidden Chosen. I am Hadassah Saiwan, and welcome back to Prophetic Dreams and Visions. We're now moving on to part 3 called Trances. But before we get started on trances, I wanted to touch base on dreams again because I had a dream. I had a I had a dream not too long ago concerning a friend, and we had a conversation on the phone, and this friend was very upset. And as a matter of fact, even before I had the dream, I have been thinking off and on throughout the week about this person and never had the time to give them a call. But then I had the dream, which prompted me immediately when I woke up to reach out to this person. And that's when it occurred to me, like, okay, this is another kind of dreaming, right? This is another way in which the Heavenly Father would prompt us to reach out to one another because of something's going on in that person's life. They only have one, or to make a connection again. Whatever his purpose is, it is up to us to be obedient. Sorry. It is up to us to be obedient, to act on his word, act on his prompting. When he prompts us to do something, it is to trigger something in the spiritual realm which we cannot understand until after the fact. Sometimes never. And sometimes never. Think about Yahusat, the husband of Mariam, when he received dreams, night visions from Alahayam to move from one place to another. All right? He did not understand that when he was obedient to the voice of the Most High, that he was also becoming a part of the fulfillment of those dreams and visions. Every time he moved from one place to another, for example, when he fled from Bethlehem to Matzorayah, it was to fulfill the prophecy that says, "From out of Matzorayah I have called my son." And then it goes on from there all along the way until he ended up in Nazareth, which is which also fulfilled the prophecy that Hamashiach was to be called a Nazarene. Okay? So when we are obedient, even though we may not understand what he wants us to do, we don't know what is occurring in the spiritual realm that we are affecting based on our obedience. And that's why sometimes you get these dreams that are very much without the symbolisms. They're almost like a replay of a, a, a part of your day or something similar, like what you would do in a day. For example, the conversation that I had, I picked up the phone, I called her. It's something that we would do in a normal, everyday life, to pick up your phone and call someone. There was nothing spectacular, but it was the conversation and her mood that I remembered from the dream. And that's the Holy Spirit speaking to my heart saying, you need to reach out to this person right away. Don't put it off anymore, any longer. So there are those kinds of dreams that are very much cohesive. Not that the person that I dreamt about was going through anything in particular. No, it may not be for that time. It may be for a future time. Who knows? Maybe the call that I made veered them away from the danger because of something I've said. They made a different decision, which kind of veered them away from the danger. We don't know. We don't know how Alahayam Yahweh will use us when we are obedient to his voice to do what he says to do. All right? So that's just an example of another kind of dreaming where it is not actual because my friend was not upset. There's nothing wrong, nothing going on. But it prompted me to call her because I've been meaning to do so and I kept putting it off. And then finally, after I had to do it. Right? So we don't know what has been averted in the spiritual realm, but I trust the Most High that when he says to do something, we have to do it. We have to do it. We don't know, right? So let's move on now to trances. And trances are unusual. They're the most unusual of all the kinds of visions and dreams that we've looked at. And there are only two recorded events of our forefathers having trances. All right. Now, I can tell you stories about people that have gone into trances due to demonic possession. I can tell you stories about that. Okay? Because those things do happen. But let's get started so we can understand what trances are all about. Visions is a word used by most people who experience a phenomenon which they cannot explain. And this experience most likely occurred while they were awake. Both believers of Alahayam and Gentiles, inclusive of Christians, can experience having visions, but we need to pay careful attention to what triggered this vision, which I will explain, and this will lead us to the source of this vision. So we have to know who is giving us the vision and why. What people loosely call visions are in fact hallucinations triggered by certain medications, certain psychedelic drugs, demonic possession, or demonic interactions. And this is what is currently happening today, especially amongst the Christians, the ones that are receiving confirmations through dreams and visions about a rapture, about September 23rd and 24th, about this person from South Africa and what they've said. They receive confirmation through dreams and visions. And look what happened. Nothing happened. So what was the source, or where did those dreams and visions come from? Because as far as they're concerned, September 23rd to the 24th never happened. It has not happened yet. They cannot confess that they were wrong, because if they do that, they will know then that everything else that they have built their faith on, if you can call it faith, is wrong. To confess that they are wrong means that everything else in their lives will all automatically be wrong. The Jesus they believe in, the Christian beliefs and doctrines that they believe in, wrong. So they have to hold on, and they have to find a way to explain what did not happen and why. Why the rapture didn't happen on September 23rd or the 24th. And their only recourse is to say that September never came, right? September never came. Can't confess that they were wrong because they're so deeply invested in these demonic doctrines that they believe in that they cannot see the truth, even if it slapped them in the face. They can't receive correction. This is in regards to both the demonic possession and the demonic interactions, which are being confused as visions from Alahayam. So many of these people, they have been either possessed by demons or they're interacting with demons because they're telling them this is the voice of God who is speaking these words to you. Go speak it to the public. I'm giving you dreams and visions about the rapture. You're going to go up in a spaceship. You're going to go up in a train. You're going to go up in a bus. The rapture bus. The rapture train. All kinds of nonsense these people are involved in, and you can't say anything to them. All right. They're confusing hallucinations and demonic interactions and calling them visions. Go back to the Bible and see what the visions our forefathers received, what they were all about. I'm not saying that the Most High cannot give us personal visions. That's how He deals with me. He gives me my personal visions, visions pertaining to me, what He wants me to do, when He wants me to do it, where He wants me to go. He reveals to me in visions. When He was calling me out, how do you think He called me out? In a vision. Because He knew the kind of person that I am. When I was in the church, I had a lot of church friends. I had what you call the church family. And He knew the day was coming where I'll be plucked out of there. That was my starting, that was my the base, the beginning of my transitioning to becoming His child, to becoming the person that He wanted me to be. Imagine trying to tell me all the way back then that I was of the bloodline of Abraham, when all that we have been trained to believe is that we were nothing better or good for other than slaves and servants. That's what we were trained up to believe. Look at the history books. Look at the faces in the history books. Do you see any of our people in there? All right. That's how they trained us up in high school and elementary school. And that's how they kept us down as a people. Now try telling, I got a friend right there in the island. You try telling her that, she can't believe. She believed that the people there in that land called Israel are the real people, because she is still blinded by the false doctrines and the lies that we've been fed for generations. She's still blinded by it. Why? Because she still calls on Jesus. All right? But the Most High, He was going to take me out of the church and permanently. So, in order to train me up from day one, He gave me a vision as clear as it was, as I'm living right now. This is how clear this vision was. And the gist of this vision was to tell me, don't study the word by breaking it down, but you see the big picture. I will tell you that, or I will give you the big picture And I will also give you the pieces, like puzzle pieces, so that you, when you put them together, you'll have the foundation, the context, everything that will make up that big picture. And you'll have clarity of understanding. All right. He said, don't study the word the way how other people are studying it, where they take a word, they go to the concordance and start breaking down every single word, trying to get that understanding. He said, no, no, no. That's not the way how you're to study my word. You study my word with me. I give you the big picture, and then I give you the pieces to fit in that big picture, and then you'll have understanding. And he gave that to me from day one, so that I was always independent when it came to Bible studies. I was not dependent on the pastor or the elders in the church. I did my own Bible studies, and it got to the point where they wanted me to teach Bible studies because they were amazed at the knowledge that I received. Now, I'm not saying this to pat myself on the back, but I'm saying this to show you that he was preparing me even when I was in the church, because he knew he was going to pluck me out of the church. And then where would I be? Where would I be? If I was dependent on another person to give me spiritual food, where would I be? Huh? I have a friend who goes to church, and a couple times his Bible, the Bible studies were canceled. He got very upset. He got so upset because he missed Bible studies. And I had to say to him, really and truly, you should be going to the Most High for him to teach you himself. Not going to a man to hear what a man believes and thinks. No. I say you need to sit down with the Most High and study with him. Because the same word that man received, you can receive too. But that just goes to show that now that I've been out of the church 20 something years, and what I have learned in all those years, they don't teach in the churches. They can't. Because that knowledge does not come from the concordance or dictionary. This knowledge comes from on high. So that vision that he gave me the first year, or even before the first year of my transforming from being a sinner to a believer, has stayed with me all these years and kept me. Do you understand what I'm saying? All right. So I know that even though I was calling on Jesus in those days, he probably closed his ears and said, well, she's ignorant of the truth. She doesn't know any better. So he forgave. And he still performed. Right? This is the awesomeness of our Heavenly Father. He understands that we're frail, that we're weak, that sometimes we're ignorant. But it's because of his mercy that he overlooks for now, because you don't know any better. Now, there's a difference when truth comes to you and you choose to ignore it. When you choose to ignore the truth, then you're no longer under ignorance. You're now a rebel. And he don't deal with rebels. Look and see what he did with our forefathers. Destroy them all in the wilderness except for two. All right, let's move on. Just like dreams, which can be infiltrated by the devils and their demons, people can also receive visions from these same evil sources. So a lot of people think, oh, hey, I'm getting a vision and I'm seeing this angelic host and I'm seeing this, and automatically think they will think that it's from the Most High. They can't conceive the idea that the information, confirmation, revelation that they're receiving is from the devil. They can't conceive that. All right. True visions come from Alahayam, and it is his way of communicating to us directly in his realm, the spiritual realm, where time does not exist. This was his way of showing events or speaking directly to our forefathers, the prophets, which now serve as prophecies for the end times, warnings, encouragement, or spiritual edification. We know that all the prophecies concerning the end times and his people, Yashraal, have been spoken. Therefore, there will be no more new prophecies given. All these people claiming that they have a prophecy. Ain't no prophecy. They're predicting. If they want to call it prophecy, it's false prophecy. It's lies. When I received my vision, I didn't call it a prophecy. I knew it was a message from the Most High for me. And maybe it can help someone out there who's listening, who has ears to hear. Help them to understand something that they've received that they couldn't understand for years. Who knows? Let's read on. He can, however, give us visions to help us understand his already spoken prophecies. The first vision that we will encounter in the Bible is with our forefather Abraham. And this is a well-known prophecy because it has to do with him, his descendants, and the end times. Let's go to Bara'ashayaf, the book of Genesis, chapter 15, starting from verse 7. And he said unto him, I am Yahweh who brought you out of Ur of the Chaldees, to give you this land to inherit it. And he said, Yahweh Alahayam, whereby shall I know that I shall inherit it, meaning the land? And he said unto him, take me a heifer of 3 years old, and a she-goat of 3 years old, and a ram of 3 years old, and a turtle dove, and a young pigeon. And he took unto him all these, and divided them in the midst, and laid each piece one against another. But the birds divided he not. And when the fowls came down upon the carcasses, Abraham drove them away. And when the sun was going down a deep sleep, now this deep sleep called Tharadama, it means trance. It fell upon Abraham, and lo, a horror of great darkness fell upon him. So let me read that again. A deep sleep called Tharadama, which means trance. It fell upon Abraham, and lo, a horror of great darkness fell upon him. Now, at first you might think he was in a nightmare. No. That darkness, that great darkness, was Alahayam coming down to bring him up. It fell upon him to bring him up. Now, when you go to the Apocrypha, the Apocalypse of Abraham, it gives you a more detailed explanation of what took place. And the angel came to bring him before Alahayam. But we're not going to go too deeply into the actual vision. I just want you to see that he went into a trance, which is almost like him sleeping, but he wasn't sleeping. It wasn't a night vision. He wasn't dreaming. It wasn't a vision. He was in a trance. And the only way that they describe it is like a deep sleep. But he could be standing on his feet with his eyes closed or even his eyes open but not moving. As if he's standing there thinking. But he wasn't in the midst of a crowd or anywhere for that matter. He was by himself. So whatever his state of being was, whether he was standing, whether he was sitting, he was not sleeping. But it's almost his body just became still. All right. And that's why we don't see too many of these kinds of trances, these kinds of visions in the Bible. Only 2 people that I've seen thus far have received these kinds of like extraordinary visions. All right. Verse 13. And he said unto Abraham, know of a surety that your seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. Now, this is the vision that Abraham received, talking about his people, his children. His name had not even changed yet, had not even been changed to Abraham, the father of multitudes. He was still Abraham. He did not even have his first child yet. All right. So Alahayam took him, brought him up to heaven. His physical body was still here, but the essence of who he is, who he was taken up into heaven. And that's where Alahayam told him everything from start to finish about what will happen to his offspring. Okay? Abraham, later renamed as Abraham, had what is called a trance, a powerful kind of vision, like someone who was hypnotized. This is not to be confused with night visions, even though the person may appear sleeping, but they are not. Even though it is described as such, even though it's described as a deep sleep. So when someone is hypnotized, sometimes their eyes are closed, sometimes their eyes can be open, but they're not really quite there. All right? That's the state that Abraham was in, called a trance. This type of vision is the most unusual of all communications with Alahayam, as it can occur while awake, and his darkness can come upon the person where they will seem as if they have fallen into a deep sleep. We see this type of vision rarely in the Bible, and only one other person we can clearly see this happening to, or this had happened to, because it's not happening right now, but it happened to, which we will discuss next. Now, why would Alahayam communicate with his people in this way? Trances are rare for a reason, as they come to relay significant messages or to bring about a tremendous change in circumstances. Now, as I'm reading this, the thought that came to me was about Peter Ka'apa'a when he received an open eye vision. All right, we can look at that in the next one. Would that also be considered a trance? No, because the darkness didn't fall upon him. What he received was something appearing before him. It descended from heaven. It was a sheet with all kinds of animals on it, unclean animals. And the voice saying to him, kill and eat. And he said, no, 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 I've not eaten anything unclean from the day of my birth or my youth. All right. So that was a vision. But trances now are a little bit more intense. In fact, not little, they are more intense because there is something deeply significant that occurred when these two particular people that we're going to talk about, the first one is Abraham. All right, and the next one, which will be Adam, something deeply significant happened. All right. And we know what it was for Abraham. We'll look and see what it was for Adam. Trances are rare for a reason. I think I read that already, but let me read it again. Trances are rare for a reason, as they come to relay significant messages or to bring about a tremendous change in circumstances. Now, it brought what Ka'apa'a, who's Peter, when he had his vision of the sheet and the unclean animals, it brought about a change in his attitude towards Gentiles. All right? Not that he had a bad attitude, it's just that he had this thinking that only only Yashwa'al can receive Rawat HaKadash. And Alahayam had to instruct him, what I call clean, you cannot call unclean. Right? And that's when he sent Ka'apa'a to the centurion, who was inquiring about Alahayam. He wanted to learn more. Him and his whole household. And not only did that vision bring about a change in Ka'apa'a, but it also brought about a change in the centurion and his entire household. All right, so when you look deeply at the differences and similarities between these dreams, visions, trances, night visions, you will see that they all have one common thread, and it is Alahayam. He is the common thread. He has a plan. He has a purpose. But he uses these ways in which to communicate with us because we are flesh beings. He is spiritual. And in order to communicate with us, either he comes down or he brings us up. And when he comes down, we have to be transformed to be able to enter into his presence. And the same thing about going up. We cannot go up in the flesh. And that's why when we have these dreams and these visions, they're so phenomenal. Because we're doing things that we ordinarily cannot do. Because now we're no longer inhibited by this flesh body. It's almost like we've broken out of a cocoon and we can fly and we can do extraordinary things. Abraham was called out of Ur and he was promised the land of the Canaanites, not only for himself but also for his descendants forever. He asked Yahweh for proof of this inheritance, and he gave him, Abraham, this vision, where it spelled out all that his descendants will go throughout their history, reaching all the way to our time, when the two kingdoms will be regathered forever. So Abraham received the entire history of his own people, even before his first son, his son of promise, was born, which will be Yitzhak. He saw everything that, all the good, the bad, and the indifference concerning his people. It got so bad that he said, I don't want to see any more evil. Just show me something good now. Because he saw how wicked his children would become. Let's read on. The 3 animal offerings and the 2 bird offerings which Abraham was instructed to offer up have great significance. What is very unusual is the age of the animals, as Alahayam later instructed Yashraal, that is Habanah, Yashraal, the children of Yashraal, the offspring of Abraham, to sacrifice these same animals, but in their first year. However, these animals that Abraham was instructed to sacrifice were 3 years old. And why those particular animals, the heifer, the ram, and the she-goat? Why those 3? Then you have the 2 birds. What Abraham was about to experience was a clear and precise vision, indicating the passage of time from his era to a far distant era, which will be our present time, and it had to do with his descendants throughout this time. Abraham was still childless at this point of time, and so this vision clearly spelled out the promise of him becoming a father of a multitude, and the land of Canaan to be the promised land for him and his descendants forever. Alahayam had made a promise to Abraham, and now he was about to establish his covenant with him and his descendants forever. So let's move on to Bara'at Shayath, chapter 15, again, verse 17. And it came to pass that when the sun went down, and it was dark, behold, a smoking furnace and a burning lamp that passed between those pieces, meaning the pieces of the 3 sacrificial animals. In the same day, Yahweh made a covenant with Abraham, saying, unto your seed have I given this land, from the river of Matzorayim unto the great river, the river Euphrates. You see now, the land of Yashraal is located in the middle of the earth. And this is the reason why Abraham had to get these 3 animals, because Alahayam wanted to establish a covenant with him concerning his descendants and also the land. And he's telling him, from the river Nile all the way to the river Euphrates, that was to be the land for Yashraal. There was a fire from the smoking furnace and a light from the burning lamp, which are symbolic of Alahayam's glory passing between the sacrifices in order to seal his covenant with Abraham. That's why he came down, and he also took him up, because he wanted to make the covenant and seal it forever. Seal the covenant with Abraham, but not only with him. Let's read on. When we look at the animals which Abraham's offspring Yashraal sacrificed to Alahayam, we see a pattern that can explain why Abraham was told to sacrifice these particular animals. The sacrifice of the heifer is for the removal of guilt from innocent hands. So let's go to Debarayam, the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 21, verse 6. And all the elders of that city that are next to the slain man shall wash their hands over the heifer that is beheaded in the valley. And they shall answer and say, our hands have not shed this blood, neither have our eyes seen it. So now they've washed their hands, and now they are guilt free of slaying a man, of murdering a person, this man. All right. There was also the sacrifice of the red heifer, which was very important for the purification of sin amongst the 12 tribes of Yashraal. So let's go to the book of Madabar, the book of Numbers, chapter 19, verse 9. And a man that is clean shall gather up the ashes of the heifer and lay them up outside the camp in a clean place. And it shall be kept for the congregation of Habanai Yashraal for a water of separation. It is a purification for sin. So we see the heifer was there to remove sin. All right, let's move on. The ram was sacrificed by the priesthood and high priest, and for them, called the ram of consecration, meaning set apart. Note that the ram was also used as a burnt offering for sin. So let's go to Bara'ashayath, chapter 22. That's the book of Genesis, chapter 22. Genesis chapter 22, verse 13. And Abraham lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, behind him a ram caught in a thicket by his horns. And Abraham went and took the ram and offered him up for a burnt offering instead of his son. So this was the time when Abraham was told by Alahayam to take your son and offer him up to me. Right? And when Abraham was about to bear down that instrument to destroy his son, gotta be careful using certain words here on this algorithm, on this platform. He said, stop. And Abraham was given a ram in place of his son to sacrifice as a sin offering, a burnt offering for sin. That's what a burnt offering was used for in the days of our forefathers. It was an offering for sin. So let's go to the book of Exodus now, Shalawam, chapter 29, verse 15. You shall also take one ram, and Aharon and his sons shall put their hands upon the head of the ram, and you shall burn the whole ram upon the altar. It is a burnt offering unto Yahweh. It is a sweet Savior, an offering made by fire unto Yahweh. And you shall take the other ram, and Aharon and his sons shall put their hands upon the head of the ram. Then shall you kill the ram and take off his blood and put it upon the tip of the right ear of Aharon, and upon the tip of the right ear of his sons, and upon the thumb of their right hand, and upon the great toe of their right foot, and sprinkle the blood upon the altar round about. Let's drop down to verse 26. And you shall take the breast of the ram of Aharon's consecration, and wave it for a wave offering before Yahweh, and it shall be your part. So this was the time when the priesthood was being established along with the high priest. Aharon and his sons had to sacrifice two rams. One for burnt offering for sin, and the other one was for consecration, the ram of consecration. So that's what the ram represents. So notice everything has to do with a sin offering. Okay. Let's go back to Numbers chapter 15, by Madabar chapter 15, verse 27. And if any soul sin through ignorance, then he shall bring a she-goat of the first year for a sin offering. So you see, they're all about varying sin offerings. And yet, at the same time, we see that the ram was also used as a sacrifice for consecration. All right. The idea of sin offering is the same for the turtle dove and the pigeon. So let's read Leviticus chapter 12, verse 6. And when the days of her purifying were fulfilled for a son or for a daughter, she shall bring a lamb of the first year for a burnt offering, and a young pigeon and a turtle dove for a sin offering unto the door of the tabernacle of the congregation unto the priest. So this is after a woman gave birth. If she gave birth to a son or a daughter, she was to bring these offerings, these sin offerings, to the priest. All right. Judging by the purpose of particular animal sacrifices, we can attribute the same for Abraham's sacrifices. Overall, Abraham was commanded by Alahayam to make sacrifices for purification from sin, to remove guilt from innocent hands, that's the heifer, to be a burnt offering for sin and a ram of consecration, to be a sin offering, a she-goat, and to conclude it all with sin offerings using a turtle dove and a pigeon. Sin offerings, consecration, and purification are the ideas that are presented to us to understand why Abraham had to make these sacrifices. The law was not yet established, but the unspoken law was still active as long as the servants of Alahayam were commanded to make these sacrifices as per his instructions. So even though Masha was not in existence in Abraham's day, and we know that the law came through Masha, there was still the unspoken law of sacrifices that our forefathers before him, they knew about them. Speaking of Abraham, Abraham learned about the sacrifices from Sham. Sham learned it from Noah. Noah learned it from his father, all the way back to Adam, who was taught by Alahayam. Okay? So now let's move on to find out why the 3-year-old animals. Why 3-year-old animals for the sacrifices instead of 1-year-old? Pertaining to the laws that Masha gave to Habana Yashwa'al from Alahayam. Abraham paid tithes. Abraham paid tithes unto Melchizedek. You call it Melchizedek. That's Melchizedek, king of righteousness. Even paying on behalf of his descendant Lawai, which is the tribe of Levi, who became the priesthood for Alahayam, while meaning he, Levi, was still in his loins, the loins of Abraham, not yet living on the earth. Now, in this prophetic event, Abraham is offering up sacrifices on behalf of the patriarchal forefathers with whom Alahayam established his covenant. Who did he establish his covenant with? Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, all before the law was established. 1 year each, 1 year per each patriarchal forefather. Speaking of Abraham, his son Yitzchak, and his grandson Yaakov, making it 3 years as per the age of the animal sacrifices. So this is how Alahayam accepted this very phenomenal sacrifice from Abraham on behalf of his son Yitzchak and on behalf of Yitzchak. And that's why he was able to make the covenant with the 3 of them. Let's read on. These three forefathers had to be spiritually cleansed, purified, and consecrated in order to maintain covenant with Alahayam, even before they were born. Just like Lawai, before he was born, was offering up tithes to Malak Sadak. It was because of these three forefathers that Alahayam's covenant was then extended to the 12 tribes of Yashraal and to us today, now through his son, Hamashiach. We can understand now why Abraham had such a profound vision, which occurred after he made the required sacrifices. There was one other forefather who also was put in a trance, whose name was Adam, and this would have been the first ever trance in our recorded history. So let's go to the book of Genesis, Shayath, chapter 2, verse 21. And Yahweh Alahayam caused a deep sleep. That word again, Taradama, which means trance, to fall upon Adam, and he slept. And he took one of his ribs and closed up the flesh instead thereof. Now, remember, I told you that even though they may appear to be sleeping, they're not sleeping. They're pretty much aware of what's going on around them. And then we'll see why in a minute. Verse 22. And the rib which Yahweh Alahayam had taken from man made he a woman, and brought her unto the man. And Adam said, This is now bone of my bones, and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, because she was taken out of man. Therefore shall a man leave his father and his mother, and shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh. And they were both naked, the man and his wife, and were not ashamed. Now, Adam was speaking prophetically here. All right? Let's read on. Adam was put into a deep sleep, which was no ordinary sleep, but a trance like Abraham, where it would appear as if he was asleep. The Garden of Odan was the sanctuary of Alahayam, and he dwells in eternity, which meant that Adam was also dwelling in eternity, where there was no need for sleep. That's how we know it was not a real sleep. It just appeared to look like sleep. This is the best word that the writer can use to describe the state that these people were in, these two men. All right. Just to help us to understand that they were not jumping around, bouncing around. No, they were in a state of deep sleep. Adam's body functioned perfectly, where he was never tired, he was never hungry, never sleepy, never thirsty. But when he fell due to sin, his body no longer functioned perfectly, just like us today. Except we are worse off than he was due to the climax and culmination of sin. Alahayam caused Adam to fall into a trance-like state when he took one of his ribs and created Hawa. Now, I used to think, because again, when I was following along with the pastor and the teachers and stuff, and you didn't know any better. I didn't know any better. All right, and you felt, or you were taught. I was taught that Adam was put to sleep so that he couldn't see what Alahayam was doing. Oh, it was supposed to be a secret. Come to realize, it was the opposite. You see how the devil lies? It was a lie. All right, because even though Adam was in a trance, he was still very much aware of what Alahayam was doing. That's why he can speak prophetically, claiming that she is now called woman because she was taken out of man. How would he have known that had he not witnessed what Alahayam was doing? That he took a rib out of him and formed a woman around it so that the two become one. All right. I'm telling you, there's so many things that the churches have taught and still are teaching that are false. When you receive the revelation from the Most High, when you receive the truth from the Most High, and you compare it to what you used to think or what you were taught, it's like night and day. Just like evil is the opposite of good, light is the opposite of darkness. Sometimes we gotta cast away all that we've been taught so that we can receive the truth. If you hold on to the lies, you have no room for truth. And we've been taught a lot of lies. Let's read on. Adam, in his trance-like state, observed the operation. All right, let me start from Alahayam. Alahayam caused Adam to fall into a trance-like state when he took one of his ribs and created Hawa. Adam, in his trance-like state, observed the operation, as Alahayam would not have hid this from him, as many believe, as we have been taught. He didn't hide anything from Adam, because Adam was pure. At this point of time, he was without sin. So why would he hide anything from Adam? The purpose of the trance was not to hide his actions, but to involve Adam on a supernatural level, where he would understand what was being done without words spoken. Now, Adam was both physical and spiritual, yet he dwelt in the Garden of Eden, both physical and spiritual as well. But where Alahayam was, he was in eternity, and that also existed in the garden. All right? But he created Adam to be both physical and spiritual so that he can dwell on the earth. He created the earth for mankind. So in order for him to participate, to see and understand what he is doing on a spiritual level, he put him in a trance. That way he didn't have to communicate with words to Adam what he was doing. And that's why Adam afterwards was able to prophesy, just like Abraham was able to prophesy. Because the word was revealed to him while he was in a trance, while they were both in trances. The evidence of this was the prophetic declaration of Adam after Hawa was presented to him. And by the way, her name is not Eve. Eve is a pagan goddess. Her name is Hawa. How could he have known that she came from him? Bara'ashayah, book of Genesis, chapter 2, verse 23 again. And Adam said, "This is now bone of my bones." How will he know that? "And flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, because she was taken out of man." And I know a lot of the pagan worshippers today believe that Adam was both male and female, which is utter nonsense, pagan nonsense. He was speaking prophetically that the bone, the rib that was taken out of him was put in her. That's why she came out of him. Not that she was literally a part of him, meaning that woman was inside of him and the woman was taken out. It's utter nonsense. No. A rib was taken out of Adam, and that rib was placed inside of the creation called woman, so that the two now have something in common with each other. This knowledge was given to him while he was in a trance, observing all that Alahayam had done, taking out one of his ribs and making woman. If you notice, at the ending of the word woman is the word man. You have the W-O in front of man, you have the word woman. All right. The next prophetic message that Adam gave was that of leaving and cleaving. So let's look at Bara'ah chapter 2, verse 24. That is Genesis chapter 2, verse 24. Therefore shall a man leave his father and his mother, and shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh. Now, where would he get this understanding from? It was given to him while he was in the trance. He understood without words what Alahayam had done. Adam and Hawa never had a mother, as they were created, not procreated. They had Ha'aba, who we know we are still to cleave to. We are supposed to cleave to him, despite being joined in marriage to another person. So he was not speaking of the Heavenly Father. He's speaking of an earthly mother and an earthly father. When a man and a woman come together, they have to leave their parents behind and cleave to one another. I know some couples bring their fathers and mothers along with them in the marriage, and that's why the marriage never works out. They don't want to leave them and cleave to their husband. They bring their mother and their father with them in their marriage, even in the same house, right? To live with them. You're looking for trouble. All right. Therefore, the father here is not in reference to Ha'aba, but an earthly father we are called to leave in order to cleave to our spouse. Where could Adam have gotten such profound words and understanding without experiencing what he had spoken? How could he talk about leaving your mother and your father when he never had one? They never had one. They never had a mother. They have the Heavenly Father, but we know that he wasn't speaking about the Heavenly Father. He's speaking about an earthly father. So how could he speak so profoundly about something that he never and could never experience? Because he was created. She was created. Unless the trance that he was put under wasn't sleep, where he was completely removed from the situation, but rather the deep sleep that he experienced was a vision of sorts, where he partook of what was going on. He saw, he experienced, he understood. Without Alahayam sitting him down and said, okay, son, here, I want you to understand this. You see the rib that I took out of you? I made a woman, and that woman, now you can proclaim that she came out of you. No, he didn't have to utter any words. Alahayam did not have to speak words to Adam to explain to him what he was doing and why. And this became the foundation for marriage, a man and a woman, even to this day, the leaving and cleaving. All right. It was because of the trance he was placed in, where he gained such deep knowledge and understanding without words spoken to him. He observed and he gained supernatural knowledge. And the same goes for us today if we should experience trances, that supernatural knowledge will be imparted to us, much like it did for Adam and Abraham. All right? Now, there's no real need for us to be put in a trance. Here's the reason why. When you look at Abraham and why he was put in a trance, we see that Alahayam wanted to give him the entire history of his people to the very end. And when we look at Adam, Adam was establishing marriage, the first covenant, the first earthly covenant between a man and a woman. Alahayam was also establishing the first covenant, spiritual covenant with Abraham, which was passed on to his son Yazahak and to his son Yaakov. That's why he had the 3-year-old sacrificial animals. This does not need to be repeated. And that's why after this, after these two events, we see that there was no need to put our forefathers. We see that our forefathers no needed. Okay. We see that our forefathers no longer experience trances. It was not necessary. But they experience amazing visions. All right? Because these two, if you notice, Abraham, spiritual covenant, Adam, physical covenant, all right? It's already been done. Doesn't need to be repeated. All right? So this is the reason why trances will not be experienced like it was with these two people. Now, I mentioned earlier before about people going into trances, but this was because of demonic possession. And this was something growing up that I've had or heard. I didn't see it with my own two eyes, but people that were close to me, like my uncle and my friend, they were present at that particular location when a certain person who was playing with a Ouija board became possessed by an evil spirit, or maybe evil spirits, more than one. And they were in a trance, meaning they were sitting there as if they were hypnotized, staring into space. And I found out that even after they prayed over him and do all kinds of things to break whatever it was, well, those demons out of him, that to this day, this person never recovered. All right? And there were other circumstances, other situations that I've heard of where people get involved with these satanic rituals. They see something on TikTok and think, oh, this is cool, I want to try it. Not understanding the demonic forces behind it. And some people are spiritually weak, meaning they're empty, voided. And so evil spirits can enter in easily and they become possessed. And when they become possessed, they go into this trance like state where no one can communicate with them. But this is not the same kind of trance that Alahayam would put his people in. But this is the demonic possession that I've seen, and I've not seen, sorry, I've heard that happened. All right, and I'm sure that there are many more situations similar to that. Many more. Because especially in this day and age when evil is ever increasing upon this earth, the darkness is ever increasing on this earth. Oh yeah. And when you have the witches and the warlocks and all the different ones, oh yeah, they love going into trances because their devils speak to them while they're in a trance. But it's not the same kind of trance or vision as what Alahayam would bring his people into. It's not the same. One is darkness, the other one is light. Alahayam is light. Even though you will see the word Hashak, meaning darkness, that darkness is his glory, is him. It is a word that allows us to know that he is shrouded in obscurity. You cannot know him unless he let himself be known. Can't. All right. So this is the ending of this particular study. I have one last study left, and this is looking now at visions. And that's the one, I mean, I've never been in a trance before, right? And people that claim that they're in a trance, you got to question that, because looking at these two examples, we see why, right? Why these two people, Abraham and Adam, were put in trances. But trances are not needed today. In fact, even after Abraham, there is no more indication that there were anyone else that ever went into a trance. They went into deep visions, yes, but not trances. All right. So let's end with the blessing for Yashua taken from Ba Madabar chapter 6, verses 24 to 26. And that's Numbers chapter 6, verses 24 to 26. Yabarakak Yahweh wa Yashamarak. May Yahweh bless you and keep you. Ya'ar Yahweh panayo alayak wa yachanak. May Yahweh cause his face to shine upon you and have favor upon you. Yasha'a Yahweh panayo alayak wa yasham lak Shalawam. May Yahweh lift up his face upon you and give you peace. And now we are to recite the command that we are instructed to recite when we lie down, when we get up, when we go out, and when we come in, taken from Debarayam chapter 6, verses 4 and 5. That's Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 4 and 5. Shama'o Yashwa'al Yahweh Alahayana Yahweh Achad wa Ahab'ath Yahweh Alahayak Bakal Babak wa Bakal Nepashat wa Bakal Ma'adak. Hear, O Yashwa'al, Yahweh our Alahayam is one Yahweh, and you shall love Yahweh your Alahayam with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your might. And with that I will say, Shalawam, Shalawam, all praises to the Most High. Abba Yah.